Hey skiers, I'm Jeff from skiessentials.com.
And I'm Bob. How's it going?
Bob and I are here today to talk about look pivots, which we're very excited to do. I don't think either Bob or myself have ever really shied away from sharing our fondness for pivots. Both of us ski on other bindings as well. I don't think either one of us is like, we're not pivot exclusive,
Right.
but we both really like them. And a lot of people are curious about them. I think it feels like you can kind of, correct me if you think I'm wrong, but it feels like you can kind of split the skiing population into two groups. Those who really like pivots and kind of understand why, and then people that are like, what are those? Why do they look different? And why are they so expensive?
If there were a cult-like aspect of ski technology,
Equipment, yeah.
this would probably be the best representative.
Totally. I
Yeah.
agree.
And my wife is even on the other side. She's like, what are you doing with that thing? You know, she sees me in them and she's like, I don't get it. I'm like, it's okay.
Yeah, that's the second group
Yeah,
that
that's
I
the
was
second group.
describing. Yeah,
You can even be within the same household and be in different groups.
totally.
It's crazy.
Yeah. So we thought we would do a video on them. Also, another reason why we wanted to do this video is we just did a video on the Jester X M-Works and Griffin X M-Works, which are really cool new bindings. If you haven't seen that video, I would definitely encourage you to check that out. And just kind of after we did that, we were like, let's talk about pivots.
Yeah.
I've also seen some discussions on the internet about pivots recently that some of the things that have been said I don't necessarily agree with. So
Yeah.
maybe we can talk a little bit about that.
Sure.
I don't think we need to waste any more time because there's a lot to talk about and there's a reasonable chance that we could be sitting here for 45 minutes. So
Yeah.
should we get right into it?
Let's do it.
What is on this table, Bob?
All right. So the new thing for 2025 and into 2026 is Pivot 2.0.
Yeah, so this past ski season
Yeah.
was the first season for Pivot 2.
But really, we only saw the blue come out in the 15 and the 18 of the
Yeah.
2.0. That 2.0 basically refers to the heel. So that's the biggest change and really kind of the only change other than colorways.
Yeah.
Starting here with this white one, this is a pivot, I guess I should say Pivot 2.0 all the time.
Pivot
But-
2.0 11.
Pivot 2.0
It's
11.
okay with me if you want to omit the 2.0.
Okay. I just want to get it right.
Yep.
Because it
I
does
understand.
have proper reference to this heel.
And that binding is very new.
Very new. Yep. So really just a lighter weight, lighter duty version of this new Pivot 13, Pivot 2.0 13.
Which is basically the 14.
Basically the 14
With the new heel.
With the new heel. And then kind of on your side of the table there, we have various 15s.
4 different colors of 15.
4 different colors of 15s, and then your blue 18.
Yep.
So the only difference between the 15 and the 18 is the spring. We move up to the full aluminum toe in all 15s and 18s versus the FDC toe in the 11 and the full action toe in the 13.
Yep.
So that's kind of the progression here. We did write down prices as well because that does factor into the discussion. Updated pricing, we can include that? Okay.
Unofficial,
Unofficial updated pricing.
because I have yet to
Yeah.
see it on paper.
Yeah.
But yes.
This Pivot 11 is $279.95, move up to $379.95, and then $479.95.
Yeah.
So 3 price points, each $100
Yeah.
from each other.
And they basically went up, as far as we know, they went up $30 per binding just due to the effects of tariffs.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're starting to see those prices increase, and we talked about it in the Jester X video as well.
Correct.
So it's
fair.
and it's I don't remember exactly the price of that Jester X M-Works, but it's pretty darn in line with a 15 or an 18
I think it's like $10 more
than this.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're practically
Yeah.
negligible when
Yeah.
you're spending $500
right,
on a binding.
which is a lot.
It's a lot of money. Yeah. So thanks, Bob. I like all the new colors. I'll definitely get some shots of the close-up colors, but really cool to have all the colors back. We brought some of our personal skis up here, and like I've been talking a lot about this orange. This is actually technically a Rossignol FKS,
Yep.
which now everything is done under the Look brand. For a long time, we had both Look pivots and Rossignol FKS in kind of a weird way. Like the Rossi branded bindings were way more popular.
Yeah, they were cooler for some reason.
Way cool.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
you saw them all over the
Yeah.
place, and like it was kind of rare to see someone on a Look pivot.
Right.
Like when you did, you'd be like, "Oh, hey, look at that!"
Right. In your mind, they
You
were
got the
two
white
different
ones.
things. Yeah.
Yeah, it was weird.
Yeah.
So I am excited because I feel like fun colors have always been a part of pivots or FKS, and we got a lot of fun colors for next season.
Yeah, and for better or for worse, some of these align with specific skis.
Yeah.
So that yellow one you got there goes
Super
with the
Black Ops.
new Super Black Ops 98.
Yeah,
The purple and gold one here.
it's great on Arcade 94.
Yeah, Arcade 94. And then the orange works well for both a Dynastar M-Pro 94, and I think there's a Rossignol that goes with that too. I can't remember it right now, but you know, those are like pretty specific to skis. I think it was interesting that they came out with that blue last year that didn't go with anything
Yeah.
in Rossignol or Dynastar's lineup. And the point there is to put your visual focus on the binding.
Yeah.
So even if you had it on an oddly colored ski, the binding would pop.
Well, that was always kind of like orange FKS.
Right.
You could see them from a mile away.
Yeah.
Be like, oh, orange bindings,
Yeah.
FKS. So, anyways, I wrote down some notes here of just general benefits or general features of pivots. So I thought we would go through those, and then maybe look at a little more details of how this heel is different than the previous heel. It's pretty similar.
Yeah.
There's just some slight differences.
Yeah.
And then we can talk about our own personal experiences
Sure.
on them. So a few things here, Bob, and we can talk about each one of them. I know you wrote down some stats too.
Yeah, I got some stats.
So here are some just general reasons why both Bob and I, as well as many others, really like skiing on pivots. They have excellent elastic travel. We'll start there. Elastic travel is really interesting. It's basically how much the binding is willing to move before it releases you. It would be unfair to just make a blanket statement that pivots have more elastic travel than anything else, because they don't. They do in the heel.
yeah.
I don't believe there's any other binding, unless we didn't write down knee binding or protector elastic travel stats, and those are weird too because they have horizontal heel release or lateral heel release.
Yeah.
So I don't know how that factors into elastic travel, but excluding those, I can't think of a heel piece that has more elastic travel, and that's kind of the big thing that a lot of people focus on with pivots. But by the numbers, what do you got?
All right, so in this pivot here, we have a 45 millimeter toe and 28 millimeter heel travel. You know, kind of your next closest competitor is a Jester, and we actually don't have stats for the new M-Works, but a normal Jester or Griffin is 30 millimeters in the toe and 16 in the heel. And those are actually pretty close to
Attacks.
the attacks.
Basically identical.
Yeah, and then kind of the winner here that you were referring to is the Solomon Strive, the Solomon Strive 16.
The most toe.
Yeah, and that has 47 in the toe and 16 in the heel.
Yeah.
So quite a good range here. And then attack, I said attack, 30 toe, 16 heel, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Shout out to the old STH that had
Yeah.
a 52 millimeter
52.
toe
Yeah.
elastic travel.
Which is interesting because you're getting like kind of both of those that have that single point of contact
Yeah.
below that allows the
Well, the STH had
The toe to
active
release.
wings too, so it
Yeah.
was like doubling
Double.
up.
Yeah.
And I'm glad we kind of didn't glossed over this a little bit, but the big difference between these bindings that we have in front of us, 11, 13, 15, is the toe. The full metal toe has that single pivot point single rotational pivot point. On paper, one of the kind of things that Look boasts about is the vertical release out of the toe, and like technically this binding I'd have to.
No, it takes a lot of force.
Yeah, it's at 10 too.
Yeah.
I don't know why a binding out of the box is at 10. So while it does do that, I don't know that I've ever vertical released out of the toe of a pivot. It would take a lot of force.
Yes.
But technically it can do it. And then they're very similar in how they function, or like the result is very similar and the functionality is very different, I suppose. So this one, instead of having the single pivot point, it has these wings that can both move out as well as up.
Yeah.
So they're basically achieving the same thing through these toe pieces, but in different ways. And then also the big thing here is plastic, metal, metal. And unless you have anything more to say about elastic travel, Bob, we can move on.
Not just that it allows you to release more consistently, but it also acts as suspension.
Yeah.
So there is a performance component to elastic travel.
Makes
It's
it
not
smoother.
just safety. It makes it smoother.
Yep.
And Look touts the quickness at which it returns to center.
Yep.
So that's something that they talk about.
Bring you back quickly.
Brings you back quicker to the middle.
Yeah. And we felt that this is not pivot related, but we A/B tested like super shape rallies with a protector or a PD.
PR12 or whatever.
Yeah, whatever. They always change the name of that binding. And it was night and day, or not night and day, but it was
different.
It was obvious that the binding with more elastic travel felt smoother.
Yeah.
Now, the segue that you made, or that we were making together, the second benefit of pivots that I wrote down is durability.
Yeah.
And I think it's fair to say that durability mostly surrounds the 15 and the 18. Having said that, I've never broken a 14 toe, and I have 2 pairs, I think. But I've always talked about this binding as being exceptionally durable, and I'm quite sure that if you literally drop this into like a bomb, it would be fine.
It will outlast us.
Yeah, right.
Like that's
yeah,
it'll outlive us.
yeah. So if you're looking for a binding that truly just lasts and lasts and lasts, as long as you take care of it, it's like there can't really be anything that's more durable.
I don't think so. So the lack of moving parts, the metal concept, it is on a plastic seat that drills into the ski.
Yeah.
But that's about it.
Also, you can replace that.
Yeah.
So if that broke, like this chunk of metal is not.
Yeah. I mean,
Not gonna break.
like the worst I've done is pop off
The window?
the window.
I think the new ones are like better.
I don't know. I found it in my driveway,
On a Pivot 2?
just on the ground in the spring.
On a new one? No, you don't have any Pivot 2s.
No, I don't have any new ones yet.
I think they did some, like, I don't know exactly what, but for some reason I feel like they changed a little bit there. All right, you ready to move on?
Sure.
We're going to call this a neutral and low platform or stand height. So we talked about this a little bit when we talked about the Jester X in their ramp angle or their drop from heel to toe. Pivots are only a 1 millimeter drop from heel to toe. So it is the flattest binding. It's not the lowest, as we saw in Jester X, and even like attacks are lower.
Attacks are lower.
But it is very, very flat. So whether that's a benefit for you or not is up to you as a skier. That's a very personal thing. But for people looking for that, this is really, really good.
Yeah, without having to go externally and alter your boot or alter, your lifter setup or anything
Right.
like that. Out of the box, this
Flat,
is as
neutral.
flat as
Yeah, which, like I said, it can be a positive or negative for different people, but I think it's at least consistent that it's very intuitive,
yeah.
like feels very natural. That's how your body is used to standing. Your
Right.
feet don't have ramp angles.
Unless you put heel lifts in.
Yeah. So, anything else you want to say about neutral low stand height?
I don't think so. It's one of those things that you feel, but you don't necessarily think about,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah. I don't.
I don't.
There must be, I'm sure there are skiers out there that do.
Yeah.
Like some of our ski instructor friends seem a lot more focused on that than me.
They feel pitched forward on a Griffin or a Jester,
Yeah. Yeah.
which has a 4 millimeter drop.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Have we missed any stats?
Not a whole lot. Strives have a 5 millimeter drop,
Yeah.
and attacks have a 3 to 4 millimeter drop, depending on your
Yeah.
grip walk or alpine status.
Yeah. So very flat compared to any other binding out there. The next thing I want to talk about is the short drill pattern. I find it does a couple things. So basically, here's your binding. The back of the binding, very obviously, is right here. You are standing on the screws, and there's really nothing else like that.
Right. Nor does the heel rotate around. So screws, heel, tibia, like everything's real direct through your knee.
Yeah.
Down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very cool. So it does a couple things. It allows a ski to flex very naturally, particularly in the tail. Really only in the tail, I suppose, but
Yeah.
you feel it through the whole ski. It does make a ski feel and flex different. And then I find that it gives you like a very connected feel, and I don't really know how else to describe it other than that, but there's something for me about standing on the screws
Yeah.
that just, and it could just be 100% perception or like a placebo. But
Yeah, no, I think there's something to that. I think that anytime that if you picture an attack or a Griffin that just has lots of material behind
yeah,
your heel of your boot, like quite a bit.
Yeah.
Like there's a track, there's moving parts, there's all sorts of stuff.
right,
As opposed to, yeah, you're locking your leg into the binding.
yeah. Yeah, it's very cool.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to say about that, Bob?
Just that those two things that you talked about, the short mounting zone and what was the one before? Sorry.
The low stand height.
The low stand height.
They
those
kinda work hand in
those
hand.
work in unison,
Yeah.
and they deliver a different feel and performance.
Yeah. We're diving into the details here.
Yeah.
Because I feel like we've done plenty of things before where we just make blanket statements like pivots feel great.
Yeah.
We're here to explain why.
I hope so.
I hope so too. So moving right along, I only have two left here, Bob. Power transfer. So with this full metal toe piece, you have very, very efficient and direct power transfer.
Sure do. Yeah, and same thing with the heel. Again, like directly below your tibia.
Yeah.
That's where your power comes from. That's where your boot's connected.
Yeah.
The fact that there's no lag behind that makes
Yeah.
for a direct power transfer and a very tight coupling.
Yeah.
I included in the article one time we were skiing with our Nordica friends, and one of the reps referred to these as bear traps in a negative way. And I thought, that's interesting. Isn't that what we want? With the safety mechanisms, for sure. But I always kind of felt like, oh, you put that thing in and there is no roll.
Right.
You are directly
And it
directly
does
connected
kind
to
of
the
feel
ski.
like you get kind of trapped in there.
Yeah.
In a good way.
Yeah. But I thought that was interesting.
I don't know who you're referring to, but I'm going to ask you off camera, and
Okay.
I'm going to have some words with this person. So, while we're on the topic, one of the discussions that I saw recently about pivots surrounded carving, and I saw a lot of people making very interesting statements that pivots don't carve well, which I have never thought about once in my life. and I have, at least feel like I've carved some very nice turns on skis with pivots, and I think there's a lot to be said about the power transfer from the toe. I think it gives you a ton of control and a ton of precision when you're initiating carves. If it's the ramp angle or the stand height as the limitation for carving, I understand that. But that's a personal thing. If you need to be angled forward to carve, that's not the binding's problem. That's you biomechanically as a skier. So I have a hard time saying that they don't carve well.
Yeah, and we've talked about this, and I don't know if it's the right time to bring it up, but that bindings don't perform. The ski performs, and the binding allows the ski to perform.
Yeah.
So if your goal is to have the binding unlock and release as much of the ski as possible and be able to make that deeper arc, then yes, these allow that to happen.
Yeah.
But it's not like this isn't necessarily a performance piece of gear. It does something to the ski that other bindings don't do.
I think that's a really interesting way to think about it, and I like it. And I'm glad that you said that about like getting like deep.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what word you used, but that's part of the reason why I actually feel like they do carve very well, because the way that they allow the ski to bend makes me feel like I'm like sinking into the apex of a corner more than I do on any other binding.
Now, with that said, they don't have this like that discussion of the material behind the heel creating a flatter spot.
Platform.
That platform does not exist on these.
It's a give or take.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I understand kind of that counterpoint where if you're on a Griffin or an Attack or a Strive
with a race plate
or a ski with a plate or any system,
right,
that whatever more material you're putting on the ski is going to add to either your leverage or
stiffness of the ski.
The stiffness of the ski.
Yeah,
your ability to create different edge angles.
Yeah.
So I get it, but I also think that these alter the way that a ski flexes enough to make it have a different feel overall.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've never had a problem, but I do think that there's a reason why frontside skis have systems.
Yeah. And a lot of that for me is stand height.
Sure.
If you're on a narrow carving ski, you probably want a little bit more stand height.
Yeah.
You know, if you put a pivot on a really narrow ski and then go try and make like giant slalom turns, you're going to boot out.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of the nature of the beast.
Right.
But on a ski like this, for somebody my size, they work great.
Yeah, they're great.
Carving.
Yep.
So, anyways, I just thought that was an interesting time to bring that up. And then the last thing I want to talk about, and then we can get into kind of some personal stuff and more details on this pivot too, is safety, which is an interesting conversation because you read and hear a lot of different stuff about pivots, and there are often claims that they are better at reducing knee injuries, and I'm not convinced that that's necessarily true.
I've never seen a study done that has said the instance of knee injuries is lower on pivots.
Exactly. That's
I don't think that exists. I don't know.
But you see it all the time.
Well, you see people being like, I had 2 blown out ACLs on Griffins and 0 on pivots, and I've skied for 150 years.
You know what, Bob? I tore my ACL once. Do you know what binding I was on?
A pivot.
Yes. So they don't completely eliminate it, and I don't think they really do.
Well, let me ask you this. Was it properly adjusted to your correct in, or did you get a little few more twists in there?
It was at a 12.
Okay.
But I was young and that technically was correct.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that safety primarily comes from proper adjustment by certified binding technicians with your boot in this binding. And that's that.
But I do think there's a safety element here.
Okay.
And the safety element is a reduced amount of pre-releases. So whether your binding releases or not can result in injuries.
Yeah.
You know, we just talked about not releasing and tearing your ACL or something like that. But the alternative is a pre-release can cause generally not knee injuries, but some pretty serious injuries.
Right.
So that's
Yeah.
where the safety factor for me comes from with a pivot.
And I think people really like this concept too of the binding twisting when your toe goes out, the heel's following that.
Yeah,
So there is something there that other bindings don't do.
yeah, but there's no like direct lateral release out of this heel.
Right.
'Cause
Not
there's-
sideways.
There's literally metal bars right there
Yeah.
stopping you from doing that. It will turn, yes.
Yeah, it's interesting. And just thinking about how binding, like how can bindings be safer than other bindings if they all have to adhere to the same
Yeah.
release values?
I mean, really the only two that are for knee injuries are knee bindings and protectors.
yeah,
You can't really definitively say that anything else is safer.
right.
At least that's my
No, and I think your elastic travel helping with pre-releases is
yeah.
is a sound argument.
Yep. Little bit on the new heel here.
Yeah,
So we've got 3 old heels here. I'll try and get this guy. This is a really old heel. So what's new on the new Pivot 2.0
all right,
heel?
let's do
Bob?
orange for orange here. There's a couple of things that just help with reinforcement. Those are not really kind of structural, but this is a great example of where your reinforcement could have used some help here in the heel. They did beef this up with extra material along the sides of the tower here.
Yeah. So if you're kicking your ski off with
Yeah.
your other ski, like you
Yeah,
shouldn't.
like you shouldn't. That's one of the things. And then they replaced the pole catch area here with metal.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Even mine,
if you
like-
did that a lot, you could pop that piece out and then your spring's exposed and
yeah.
all
Yep.
sorts of weird stuff.
Yep.
So these two things are more kind of durability oriented and keeping them look fresh. In the heel here, they have added a posi drive screwdriver and an Allen key. So you used to have to use your flathead for the heel, and now you can use posi drive or Allen key. So easier to adjust the din. I'm not gonna pop the top here, but the adjustment for forward and back adjustments is longer than it used to be. So you actually have a 20 millimeter sense of, so you can go back and forth a boot size.
Yep.
So that's a pretty big one.
Yeah. You could never do that before. You could only go like a few millimeters.
Yeah. And they have increased this distance in this area here. So if you do pop the top and your finger's under there, you're less likely to catch it.
It still looks nerve-wracking
I'm
to
not,
me.
yeah, I've learned long ago not to mess around with these things.
This finger is permanently
Yeah.
bent from
Yeah.
being stuck.
Lots of
And
crushed
a pivot
thumbs
heel.
and fingers under the heel pieces. So
Yeah.
always be careful. And then
110 brake?
110 brake, no, 105.
Thank you.
So new 105 brake. You know, it's not super simple to change brakes on these things. You know, in my mind, as Vermont biased skiers, I wish they had included an 85. I think that's kind of,
Yeah, so what is it now? 75, 95, 105, 115?
and maybe a 130 still.
I don't remember.
But yeah, I would have loved to see the 85. I don't love your 95 on an 87. That's kind of one of my nitpicks about the pivots here is that your brakes don't always tuck in as well if you're on like a 95 brake on an 88. And there's
Yeah.
so many good 88s out there that I would love to put a pivot on.
Yeah, and this is 87, like you said. You can't quite get a 75 around it.
Right.
There's about like, in my experience, there's like 8 to 9 millimeters where
Yeah.
you can actually go above the stated width of the brake,
Yeah.
but you can't go more than 10.
I have this 95 on a 100 here.
I used to put the 95
so do
on
you.
an Enforcer 104.
No, you have a 105 on that.
I have a new
okay.
one. Yeah, I'm very appropriate now.
Yes.
It's very exciting.
Yeah, I've had a 95 on like up to a 105, but
Yeah.
you really gotta.
I had it on Enforcer 104.
Yeah.
Just, like famously, and
Yeah,
maybe not famously. It was this binding.
sweet.
Looked awesome on the blue one. So, Bob, why do you like skiing on a look pivot?
The mental game is a big one for me. I think confidence is huge, and that's why you see so many professional skiers, big mountain riders, park skiers, that you get an incredible sense of confidence when you step in,
Yeah.
and knowing that you're going to be retained to the utmost level before you get ejected.
Yeah.
You know, that level of confidence and that mental game, I think, is huge. It is the thing connecting you to the ski. You
Yep.
know, it really it has to be appropriate.
Yeah.
So even though I am pretty confident on my Strive 16s and
Love Strive
enjoy that
16.
binding, like I have no problems, the confidence in the pivot is like first and foremost for me.
Yeah.
It's performance is secondary. Like I'm not
Yeah, sure.
I'm not that big about the performance level or the ability of the binding to allow the ski to flex naturally. Like that's nice, but for me it's confidence first and foremost.
Bumps? I know a lot of bump skiers like them.
Yeah, I don't mind. Again, like the brake is tricky. I don't
Right,
like
because you want to
don't like
bump
the,
skis.
yeah, that's just a nitpick I have is I don't like the brakes on these things. I like them when they tuck in. Those Griffins, those attacks, the strives, they are nowhere near the top sheet of your ski.
Yep.
So for bumps and stuff like that, I don't know. I don't really care.
Sure.
But I don't like it when my brakes hit. And I hit my brakes more with pivots than I do with others.
Very interesting. Do you want to know why I like them, or unless you have anything else to add?
Nope. What do you like about them, Jeff?
I like the elastic travel in the heel. And if you... I know that I'm speaking to like a relatively small percentage of the skiing population, but I think it's a good way to think about it. Think about the physics and mechanics of landing switch and like where your weight is. It's forward.
I was going to say, mine would be on my toes.
It's forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the way that your body bends. Like when you're landing switch or backwards, like generally all of your weight or most of your weight is over
Yeah.
the front of your ski, which is putting a lot of pressure on the heel piece. And if you have pre-release landing switch, it just, forgive me for lack of a better word, it sucks.
Right.
Like
Both
you-
skis just,
face just
Gone, yeah.
slams into an icy landing.
Yeah.
It is like, it's awful. And it happens like more often than it should. You know, not that those other bindings that we talked about are like bad, but it definitely has happened to me more on, I think Jester's, like the Royal Family heel actually does a pretty good job. Like the vertical spring,
Yeah.
it feels like it works really well, but it's definitely happened to me on other bindings, attacks. I skied on attacks for years, and like, again, like they work really well, but definitely had more switch landing pre-releases on bindings like that. So yeah, for me, it's like like you were just saying, it's a confidence and comfort thing.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of know that like, if I need to, I can throw my skis underneath me and try and land backwards, and I'm not going to pre-release.
Yeah.
And that's just a really nice feeling, or like something to fall back on that is really, really helpful. I'm also like not very heavy, and I do feel like pivots change the characteristic of a ski almost always in my benefit. Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
Like the way that it bends underneath you. I also have a more upright skiing style. So if anything, like maybe I enjoy bending the tail of a ski more than a lot of skiers, or like bending the underfoot zone more.
You're also generally more forward
Exactly.
than most of the population. So yeah,
Exactly.
you have even more room to work with back there.
Yeah. So, yeah, those are the big things for me. That elastic travel in the heel and the way that the Ski Flex is just awesome. Now, another reason, it's a little bit of a joke. They make the tails of your skis look longer, so your tail grabs look sweet.
Yeah. I mean, it all counts. You know, like
it's silly, but
yeah.
it's true.
No, I mean, there's
Like
so
a center
few-
mounted ski with pivot, it looks like your tail is like
Yeah.
5 centimeters longer than your tip. People comment in lift lines all the time. They're like, "Are your bindings mounted forward?" And I'm like,
Right.
"No, there's just nothing behind you."
Yeah, and you got a tiny foot too, so you're even that
Totally.
much farther.
Totally.
Yeah.
So that's it.
Yeah. Pretty cool.
I really like them.
Yeah, I think that with the new Strives,
Yeah, new Strives are really good.
they're really good.
And that Jester X is awesome.
Yeah, and the Strive 16 specifically because it still has that STH heel,
Yeah.
which is really, really,
Yeah,
you know,
Strive,
that's another durable,
Strive
really,
16 is awesome.
really well-rounded binding, and it just is, that's comfortable. You know, like that's something I grew up skiing on. So
Yeah.
it's, again, more of a mental game, but also, you know, has good elastic travel and is very satisfying to click into.
Yeah.
You know, like these aren't that satisfying to click into.
Josh, should we talk about pivot downsides?
Yeah, if you have like a tiny little bit of snow anywhere on your heel, you're not going to get that full vertical, and it can be unnerving. Yeah, I had mentioned the brakes. You know, I'll kind of run through mine. I don't love how the brakes hang. Oh gosh, I don't know if I can get this thing out here.
I was surprised how easy it was.
On this one, I don't know if it'll show up, but I had to cut
Yep.
the brake extensions off so that they wouldn't drag.
Yeah, I had to do that on.
So
couple
that's kind
skis.
of that's kind of a big ask for a binding that's upwards of $400 to be cutting parts off of it so it fits on your ski better.
Yeah, I understand.
And then just recentering the heel if you ever want to get in, and taking them off just isn't that easy. And then if you take them off and the thing doesn't depress all the way, then you have to manually
Yeah.
click it up if you want to get back in. It's user friendliness stuff that are
Yeah.
the downsides. It's not a
It just adds like 5 to 10 seconds to like every situation of taking your skis on or off.
yeah.
Which is fine for
Yeah.
most people.
Like
But,
they're quirks to get to here.
yeah.
That's the whole thing, is that they can't make a turntable heel. They can't put the screws under the heel. They can't have a short mount zone without those quirks.
Yeah.
So I think that it's up to people whether they want to deal with that to get these benefits.
Yeah. 500-gram toe piece is probably a downside for me.
For you, yeah, yeah,
They're just heavy.
they're heavy.
They feel pretty heavy. Like a pivot on a heavy ski, like, I mean, you've got a 14 on your Enforcer, which actually helps keep the weight down because of 14 or 13 is 330 grams instead of 500.
Yeah, these Enforcers in a 191 feel as heavy as the Dancers in a 182.
Yeah, well, I had a white Pivot 18 on an Enforcer 110.
Yep.
And boy, that thing was heavy.
Yeah,
So that's probably the biggest downside for me. I guess my other one is price, but
premium bindings are now
I know
$500.
I know.
It's just,
it's not a downside, it's just reality.
yeah,
But
yeah, it's tough.
I don't really have any other downsides.
Yeah, I think it's
And
just,
again, it's like personal stuff.
right. For me, it's ease of use, and I don't like the brakes. That's
Yeah.
it.
I don't mind not having an 85 brake 'cause most of my skis are. I kind of have like a gap.
Yeah.
I have like 68 underfoot skis. And then I have a Montero AX that does have a 75 brake around it.
Right. So I wouldn't put the 95 on my Montero AR.
Right.
I would put the 85 on it.
Right.
And that'd be great. And I would certainly do that.
Yeah, I get a little nervous every once in a while skiing switch on this,
Yeah.
but I've never caught.
I don't know.
Last down.
I catch brake because I ski with my feet together a lot, and so
Yeah.
I catch brakes a lot.
Last downside, if you do break a brake, it's not very fun. And replacement turntables they may have gone up, but last I knew they were $100 for a pair.
Yeah.
And then it's a more involved process of swapping it. And this is not something that people have to worry about, but setting forward pressure is really tricky.
Yeah, it's a little bit easier. They have a actual line
Range?
here now.
They've always had a line.
Well, I know, but now it has arrows, which is pretty cool. So it
just
used
to
to,
emphasize the line.
I mean, it used to just be that little strip of plastic there that the white would line up with, but now
Yeah.
there's arrows. But
If you're-
again, these are things that certified binding technicians should be
Yeah,
doing.
and if you're a pivot skier, especially if you're a pivot skier and a binding technician, you know that there's a little bit of an art to
Yeah.
setting pivot forward pressure.
Yeah. They don't make it super easy for you.
No. So that's it. How long was that, Bob?
I don't know.
My microphone's at 43 minutes.
Perfect.
Let us know if you have any questions. We could sit here and talk about pivots a lot. I feel like there are some things that we didn't talk about, but I'm more happy to talk about them, or happy to talk more about them,
Sure.
whatever.
Yep.
When's the last time we did a binding comparison?
This fall.
Did we do one this fall?
Yeah. Yeah, and we had the Pivot 2.0.
We probably don't need to do another binding comparison this fall, but we could if you really want to see one.
We'd really just be adding the
The Jester.
Jester and the Griffin M-Works.
Yeah.
You've thought of something else?
I've thought of something else. We don't sell it, but a lot of people like the Pivot because it is designed exclusively to work with the cast system.
Yeah.
And a lot of people really like the cast system.
Yep.
If you don't know what the cast system is, go look it up, CAST. If pivots aren't for everybody, the cast system is certainly not for
A
everybody.
step beyond.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, but it is really cool, and for people looking for a certain level of performance and functionality, or performance within certain functionality, there's not much else out there.
Yeah.
Like Duke PT kind of was like basically inspired by the cast system.
Right.
I think that's perfectly fair to say.
And now the new Attack Tour.
Yeah.
Whatever, I forget what that's called.
Yeah,
But
similar concept. So that's it. That's our conversation about look pivots. Let us know if you have any questions, and we will talk to you soon.
bye.